Prabhupada. It works until it stops working. It's still working though. Don't sneeze, it might go off. Let us offer our obeisances to our founder Acharya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The disappearance day of Srila Sanatana Gosvami. Coincidentally, the same day as the Purnima, coincidentally the same day as Guru Purnima. Boy, did I have lots of email to answer today. Happy this and happy that, and thank you. And Sanatana Gosvami. We're going to hear many nice things about Sanatana Gosvami this evening. Not everything, because we'll be here for 3 hours, but this is just going to be 2 hours instead of 3. There's a lot to say about Sanatana Gosvami. He's amongst the elders of the immediate followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis, and his Ishtadev, his celebrated deity, is the Madan Mohan deity, pictured here with Lalita and Radha by his side, on either side. And this original deity can be seen not in Vrindavan and not in Jaipur, but in Karoli. Your eyebrows went up. There's a nice history. Many of you know some part of the history. Some part of the history was there was a Muslim king just down the road from Vrindavan that wanted to smash all the temples and all the deities in Vrindavan, and the word went out, and so the deities were surreptitiously taken from one village to the next village to the next village secretly, and then eventually to Jaipur, where they were safe because the king of Jaipur, Jai Singh, was very powerful and impenetrable. However, in passage of time, there was a princess in Jaipur and a prince in Karoli. And the princess of Jaipur agreed to be married to the prince in Karoli on one condition: she could bring Madan Mohan with her, because she was too attached to Madan Mohan. And so Madan Mohan took another trip from Jaipur to Karoli. That's where this photograph is taken, and we'll see the photograph again later. Very wonderful deity, very merciful deity, very personable deity. Not that all deities are less personal, but particularly playful and affectionate. We'll hear. So Sanatana Gosvami, this is a nice painting I like because it shows he is the third from our left or third from the right, looking the most elderly, and right next to him is his brother Rupa Goswami, and then the other four Goswamis of Vrindavan. And behind them, of course, is Govardhan Hill. So he resided in Vrindavan for approximately 40 years, and the first 30 years of his life was preparing to go live in Vrindavan for the remaining 40 years of his life. So he lived until he was 70, and during that period of time, he was the leader, you could say, the village elder amongst the sadhus of Vrindavan, because by these personalities, they were like magnets that drew many other sadhus and layers and generations of sadhus, and he was the elder and leader amongst them. We know from the Sad Goswami Astaka what the activities of the six Goswamis were, and this painting is meant to illustrate. It's a nice Pushkar painting. You can tell by the colorful nature of everything, the flowers and the lights and the whole scenery. They engaged in writing, they engaged in discussing, they engaged in propagating Krishna Bhakti, in the mood of Krishna in Vrindavan, so Braja Bhakti or Krishna Prema. And they were steeped and immersed in that very activity assigned to them, along with restoring the places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. They took assistance of others, but they were very instrumental, as was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example, as we all know, rediscovering where the place of Radha Kund was. And at that time, it was just a pond in an agricultural field. And he went to take his bath and declared, this is Radha Kund. And in course of time, Radha Kund was restored. So he wanted them, the six Goswamis, particularly Rupa and Sanatan, to determine once again these lost places and to restore them. And so that was a very important service for all of us, along with the writing of transcendental literatures. And then very different art style. There's Rupa and Sanatan, the two foremost amongst the six Goswamis. One of the celebrated literatures giving basically a who's who in Gaura Leela, who are these personalities in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, who are their counterparts in Krishna Leela. It's a book written by Kavi Karnapur. Kavi Karnapur is maybe not so well known within ISKCON, but he should be for this one reason and other reasons. He wrote not many books, but very important books. One of his important books was this one listed here, Gauragona Desh Deepika. This is the Who's Who anthology. But another very wonderful book is Ananda Vrindavan Champu. And a little sneak preview of what we're going to do tomorrow, because it came up yesterday. One of our members, young girl, was asking, Vatsasura was a calf demon, and he was planning to kill Krishna. By what method was he planning to kill Krishna? Remember asking the question? So, our scholarly young fellow over here said, according to Amala Bhaktaswami, in his book he wrote on this topic, but so I researched, and it's not in the reference books. One of his primary reference books is in Krishna's pastime to Vrindavan is Ananda Vrindavan Champu by the same author, Kavi Karnapur. It's not there. Sorry to say. So we don't have the answer to the question. Even careful research, so far, no answer. And if Kavi Karnapur doesn't know, how are we going to find out? If anybody knows the answer to that question, you let us know sometime. So here's a description of from Gauragona Deshtipika, who is Sanatana Goswami in Krishna Lila. So Rupa Manjari is Rupa Goswami. Rupa Manjari is one of the principal younger associates, not Gopi friend, but younger Manjari assistants of Radharani, chief of whom is Rupa Manjari, who is Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Manjari's closest friend, who is known by the names, so there's not two living entities, one Manjari is known by two different names. This question came up with the Chinese devotees. There's one Mataji, one Manjari, sometimes principally known as Rati, also known as Lavanga Manjari. Appeared in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Sri Sanatana Gosvami, who is considered to be a personal extension of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pretty dramatic, a personal extension of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sadhya Gorabhina Tanu. His body is a personal extension of the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pretty amazing. And Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, Prabhupada writes, this is in relation to Nityananda, chapter 5 of Adi Lila, anyone desiring to become expert in the service of Sri, Radha, and Krishna should always aspire to be under the guidance of Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. To come under the protection of the Goswamis, one must get the mercy and grace of Nityananda Prabhu. So anybody here that aspires to someday become expert in the service of Sri Radha Krishna, now you know what to do. At least the steps, the path to go on. And mentioned here is Raghunath Das Goswami. And Raghunath Das Goswami wasn't a prolific writer, but what he did write was fantastic, super fantastic. And one of his books, a very short book, but very powerful book, is Manashiksha, where he writes something very similar. Instruction to the Mind, text number 3. Listen, O mind, if you desire in every birth to reside in the land of Braja with loving attachment to and service to the youthful couple Sri Radha Krishna in close proximity, then clearly remember and offer obeisances to Sri Swarup, Sri Rupa, and his associates in Vrindavan, and to Sri Rupa's elder brother, Sri Sanatana. So he did that himself, Raghunath Das Goswami, and this verse, this whole section, is describing the path of Raga Bhakti. And the path of Raga Bhakti is, as the regulative stages of Bhakti become mature, one may aspire for a beyond the regulations element of sadhana bhakti to Raga Nuga sadhana bhakti. And the Raga Nuga sadhana bhakti includes becoming attached to the eternal associates. And he's pointing to these persons give access to those eternal associates. He lists 3. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Sri Swarup, that's Swarup Damodar. And little history, because we're focusing on Sanatana Goswami, but it's nice to get this kind of bigger picture along with Sanatana Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami got the mercy of living in Puri with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the mercy of Nityananda. There's a nice description of how that happened. And when he went to Puri, by the mercy of Nityananda, he went straight to the Gambhira, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, fell at his feet. Lord Chaitanya knew who he was already because they had some exchanges previously. And he gave him some very firm instructions what to do while residing in Puri. And one of those instructions was, you situate yourself under Swarup Damodar, and he will train you in all respects. Because Swarup Damodar was Lalita in Krishna's Leela. Each of the associates in Gaura Leela had their counterpart in Krishna Leela. So who is as dear to Radharani other than Vishakha and Lalita? And Swarup Damodar was personally training everything. So our having Chaitanya Charitamrita is a result of that training. Because he trained Raghunath Das Goswami, who then went to Vrindavan, explained everything for a number of years, every day, 3-4 hours every day for a number of years at Radhakund. And the very elevated senior kavi, learned poet, person heard everything and understood everything. And he was requested by all the Vaishnavas to write the biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, largely what he had heard from Raghunath Das Goswami, which was what Raghunath Das Goswami had heard and understood from Swarup Damodar. So we're here we are sitting in the living room, and we're trying to recall our connection to these great personalities because we're here because of them. And we wouldn't be here without them. And to go further and further and more deeply into the eternal service of Radha Krishna and eternal residence in Vrindavan, in their service, in their association, the divine couple. These are the doorways. These are the personalities to become attached to. Same chapter 5 of Adi Leela. This is a description of Raghunath Das Goswami in his writing about Sanatana Goswami in one of his other books, or a prayer, Vilapa Kushamanjali, verse 6. And he's feeling deeply obliged to Sanatana Goswami as follows. You recognize in red letters this phrase, para dukkha dukhi. It's a celebrated phrase that Prabhupada repeated again and again and again. Para dukkha dukhi. I was unwilling to drink the nectar devotional service possessed of renunciation. He was absolutely renounced, but his expression of humility. But Sanatana Goswami, out of his causeless mercy, made me drink it, even though I was otherwise unable to do so. Therefore, he is an ocean of mercy. Kripambudhir. Kripa Ambudhi. It's right in the verse. He is very compassionate to fallen souls like me. Paradukkha dukhi. And thus it is my duty to offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Sri Sanatana Goswami Prabhu, the teacher of the science of devotional service, wrote several books, of which Brihat Bhagavatamrita is very famous. Anyone who wants to know about the subject matter of devotees, devotional service in Krishna, must read this book. So where did he get this understanding? Answer, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him daily for 2 months. Imagine being a student of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day for 2 months and understanding everything. And everything is very, very elevated subject. They started simple, and then it got very elevated and out of sight elevated. And he understood everything. He was empowered to understand everything and then to write. Same with Rupa Goswami. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 2 months. 2 months. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Ramananda Roy, Sanatana Goswami's renunciation of material connections is just like yours. Humility, renunciation, and excellence and excellent learning exist in him simultaneously. Now, some persons who are very learned, they're not so humble. And some persons who are very humble, they're not necessarily so learned and renounced. I empowered both of these brothers to go to Vrindavan and expand the literature of bhakti, which they did. So there's a cover of one part of Brihat Bhagavatamrita because it has several parts. It has part 1, part 2, but part 2 is so voluminous it takes 2 parts, 2 volumes. And along with writing the book, he wrote a commentary on the book. Every verse. He wrote the book and then wrote it so that people might not understand. He wrote a commentary so people would understand. And it is very elevated, so sometimes you read his commentary, it's authoritative, but you may have to read it a few times, or more than a few times. Something like Rupa Goswami's writings. You read it again and you read it again, and read it again, and eventually, to some degree, some understanding. So he wrote that commentary. Hari Bhakti Vilas. Many of you know what that book is. I call it's a how-to manual. Like how to observe Purnima, how to observe Ekadasi, how to observe Janmashtami, how to worship the deity, how to conduct marriages, how to this, how to that. It's a how-to manual with lots of details of not just a short little statement, but details and details. It's very comprehensive. It's a manual for Vaishnavas, particularly Gaudiya Vaishnavas, how to do everything in devotional service. Hari Bhakti Vilas. Then he wrote a commentary just on the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, because this other Brihat Bhagavatamrita is a very interesting, creative retelling of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam without doing the verse-by-verse translation. The 10th canto, verse-by-verse, a poetic summary of the first half of the 10th canto, often called Krishna Lila Stava. At least within ISKCON, I'm familiar with Krishna Lila Stava, Krishna in Vrindavan. And he, as many other personalities he also wrote an Astaka about Damodar. The Damodar Astaka that we sing isn't composed by him, but many other Damodar Astakas were composed, as well as Kartik Mahatmya. Celebrated books by Sanatana Gosvami. Here's Bhaktivinoda Thakur appreciating both of these authors. This is one of the explanations from Gitavali, one of his compendium of songs. You should remember Srila Kavi Karnapur. We mentioned his name already, the author of the Who's Who in Gaura Leela, Kavi Karnapur. It's a good name to remember. And all his family members were all sincere servants of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You should also remember the father of Kavi Karnapur, Shivananda Sain. Always remember all those Vaishnavas who strictly followed the path of Srila Rupa Goswami and who are absorbed in bhajan. If you actually want residence in the land of Braja, then you must remember all the Vaishnavas who are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, very similar to what we heard a little while ago. So there he is, a nice painting of one of his little chalets, Bhajan Kutir. He lived very simply in Vrindavan, chanting and writing and remembering Krishna. These two names are connected with Sanatana Goswami. In addition, one of the four Kumaras, there are four Kumaras, right? Do you know the names of the four Kumaras? Name one of them. Sanat Kumar. Very good. Sanatana Kumar, the jewel among the sages, entered into the body of Sanatana Goswami. That is, the learnedness was present in Sanatana Goswami as a bhava expansion. In Bhakti Ratnakar, what's Bhakti Ratnakar? We'll see, hear references to this again and again during this time together, but it's a book that was written after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure, primarily covering pastimes of associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that were not mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and events and personalities that happened after Mahaprabhu's departure. So it's similar to but different from Chaitanya Charitamrita and accepted by the Gaudiya followers as very authoritative. So it's a very nice book and very nice understanding. It's not as sweet and in composition as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, because he's Kaviraj. And Kavi Karnapur is Kavi, but he's not Kaviraj. So, through Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, Lord Chaitanya taught humility. Taught many things, but as a foundation, humility must be there. Again, this is chapter 5 of Anchilila. No, this is Anchilila. Through Sanatana, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the articles of faith in devotional service, similar to what he said to Ramananda Roy. So that's the activities of these two brothers. Again, Bhakti Ratnakar reciting. Sanatana's teacher was Vidya Vachaspati when he was younger. Vidya means knowledge. Vachaspati, the country's leading scholar who would come and stay in Ramakeli from time to time. That is to say, before Sanatana Goswami became Sanatana Goswami, he was involved in Ramakeli in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. But he was a Brahmana, and he had a very elevated Vaishnava teacher, Vidya Vachaspati. So Vidya Vachaspati trained him in fundamentals, a leading scholar. Sanatana studied all the scriptures from him. No one can achieve the depth of devotion that he had for his guru, revealed to us by Bhakti Ratnakar. We saw this depiction a little earlier. This is his deity, Madan. At this time, the deity was known as Madan Gopal. We'll hear more about Madan Gopal becoming by name then Madan Mohan, but initially Madan Gopal. And we see Sanatana Goswami, would have exchange with the deity. The deity would talk with him. He would offer things to the deity. The deity would see in his hand. It was a very, very intimate exchange. Incredibly intimate exchange. Not worldly, intimate exchange with his deity. Deity worship along with 4 other items. They're mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is from the Sanatana Shiksha section of Chaitanya Charitamrita during the 2 months that Mahaprabhu thoroughly instructed Sanatana Gosvami. So here he's indicating 5 items that are of the many items of devotional service most important. It's a well-known verse. Because of this audience, I think we can recite the verse together. Sadhu Sangha Nama Kirtan Bhagavat Shravan Mathuravas Shri Murtira Shradhaya Shravaivan. Now, I attended many classes of Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. I really like Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, and he's so sweet and so learned. I mean, has Dinabandhu come here yet? He's doing a tour. We're going to be together in Dinabandhu and I are going to be together in Chicago. I'm looking forward to it. And he's lots of fun. And he knows pastimes like nobody else knows pastimes. But he doesn't have the same flair for knowledge that Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. So a combination of humility, vast learning, and great humor. Dinabandhu's got the great humor and the pastimes. But anyway, I've heard Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj say this many times in his South African accent. It's really nice. It's not British. It's not English, American. It's got its own flair. Sadhu Sangha Nama Kirtan Bhagavat Shravan Mathuravas Shri Murtira Shradhaya Sevan. One should associate with devotees, Sadhu Sangha, chant the holy name of the Lord, Nama Kirtan, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Shravan, reside at Mathuravas, and worship the deity, Shri Murtira, with faith and veneration, Shraddhaya Sevan, with faith and veneration. 5 most important items in all of devotional service, and he engaged in all of them expertly. And here's this prana mantra. Many of you know the prana mantra, so we can say it together. Jayatam surato pangor mama manda matergati matsavasva padam bojo radha madana mohano. Glory to the all-merciful Shri Radha and Madan Mohan. They are the only shelter of my depraved and crippled self. Their lotus feet are the be-all and end-all of my life. This is the temple, or a painting of the temple where they were worshipped, and the temple was placed on top of Dvadasa Aditya Tila. So I spoke on this topic yesterday evening to the Chinese devotees, and somebody wanted to know what's the meaning of this. Dvadasha Aditya Tila. So the answer is, after the Kali Lila, Krishna was very cold because he had been in the river water for a long time. And by that time, his body was cold. Of course, he's transcendental, but he was cold. So he went on top of this hill and requested the sun god in 12 versions or 12 multiplications of his heat to warm up his body again. That's Dwadasa, like Dwadasi, that's 12. Aditya, the light of the sun, Tila hill. So that's where the temple was built, on top of that hill where Krishna got warmed up by the sun. In the beginning, as you see that little painting on the left, there was no temple. We'll hear how the temple came to be. It's very transcendentally nice story. But it had to do with the playfulness of Madan Gopal, who later became Madan Mohan. And here's another British period of time illustration of the same place, up on the hill, and the river Jamuna down below. When Sanatana Gosvami was young, I'm not going to read this, I'll just tell the story. When he was young, he had a dream. And in his dream, a Brahmana appeared in his dream. And at this time, there wasn't a printing press, there wasn't a BBT, there was handwritten copies only, and very rare to have a handwritten copy. And in his dream, a young Brahmana came and offered him a full, complete 12-canto Srimad Bhagavatam in a handwritten version, and then departed his dream. And when Sanatana Goswami woke up, very, very happy. And in the morning, after he did his morning duties, at the very same spot, the same person that appeared in his dream came to him and gave him a copy, a handwritten copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4. This is the Lord's intention. He wants me to read Srimad Bhagavatam. So he was 16 when this happened. And every day for the rest of his life, a young Brahmin boy reading Srimad Bhagavatam for the rest of his life, without fail. In one of his prayers, the Krishna Lila Stava, he praises Srimad Bhagavatam. I didn't put the verse here, but it's a very beautiful prayer. You, my only companion, my only friend, my guru, my deliverer, my fortune, my source of pleasure, I pay all respects to you. And that's his heart's expression. Under Vidya Vachaspati, we heard his name. He was his teacher in Ramakeli, and he learned especially Srimad Bhagavatam. So and during this period of time, it was special. Amongst the Brahmanas that studied the Vedas, not many studied Srimad Bhagavatam, but Sanatana Goswami did, and his teacher trained him in Srimad Bhagavatam from childhood. So there's the same painting you've seen several times already. When he first began worshiping the Madan, we'll hear the story of how it happened. He was unwilling to worship the deity because he was a mendicant. He didn't have any place to put the deity. He didn't have anything to offer the deity. And the deity assured him, it's okay. I want to be worshipped by you. That was the intimacy between the deity and him. So for 40 years he engaged in this way. Now going back before the 40 years of being in Vrindavan, he was in Ramakeli. And when he was in Ramakeli, he had his 2 brothers. Rupa was one of the 2 brothers. Anupam was the 3rd brother. Anupam had a son, and that son was Jiva Goswami, or Jiva. So Jiva was their nephew, their brother's son. So the 3 of them, Sanatan being the elder, there's a very nice history of all of this. We heard already he was studying Srimad Bhagavatam under Vidya Vachaspati. When he was in Ramakeli, he also worshipped the deity of Madan Mohan that are still being worshipped in Ramakeli, Madan Mohan. And this is the place where he had an office, very old structure in Ramakeli. And the situation, going back to this painting, the explanation that I've heard, again, from Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, I just take it as, I haven't read it somewhere, but it makes complete sense. He was a very senior person amongst the Vaishnavas in the area where he lived. And the Nawab came in with his military forces and took over the whole kingdom. And he then found a local person, namely Sanatana, to be such a prominent leader. He had a private discussion with him and said, I'm going to make you an offer. You decide what you want to do. A, you become involved in my government, and I'll take care of you handsomely, and you can give protection and training and education to all of your fellow Vaishnavas here in this kingdom. And alternatively, if you say, no, I don't want to do that, then what I'll do is I'll torture, mutilate, and harass, and make life terrible for all of the people that you hold dear to you, and they hold themselves dear to you. So you think about it. A or B. He didn't want either, but he selected A. So he was then given very substantial, he and his two brothers, the prime minister, home minister, and finance minister. They ran the government so that Nawab could run off with his armies and conquer more territory. And he had a good ruler. Like he can't get better than Sanatana Gosvami. So he gave them fabulous wealth, and they used their fabulous wealth, as you see, to make a facsimile of Vrindavan. And so he liked the gardens and spending time in this place that was intended to remind him and everyone of Vrindavan and his worship of his deity. And although that was all right, it was very distasteful, because the Nawab was a madman, wild. And so while he's ruling in Ramakeli, he started corresponding with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. Now, how do you do that? You don't send a text message. He had handwritten letters that were delivered by a Brahmana, trusted Brahmana. He would carry the letter. And one time a letter came back from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, giving some instruction to him. And here's with the content found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Become just like a wife who is attached to another man and will perform her worldly duties to her husband very nicely so he doesn't suspect. But in her mind, she will always be thinking of the other man, waiting for the chance to meet him. That was his instruction. And Sanatana Gosvami understood. So he followed. And we'll see a little bit more detail, but at a certain point in time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while residing in Puri, he wanted to go to Vrindavan. So those of you that know your geography in India, Puri is on the eastern coast. Vrindavan is way up in the northwest, north and west part of India. And Ramakeli is practically due north. So on the pretext of going to Vrindavan, he went to Ramakeli first. Means he wasn't planning to go straight away to Vrindavan. He was planning to give his association to Rupa and Sanatan. And when he came to Ramakeli, he was received by the two brothers. Of course, there were three brothers at that time. And as you can see how they're dressed, they were dressed as Muslims, although they were from Brahmin families. And they even had Muslim names, Dabir Khas and Sakar Malik. And at this time, Lord Chaitanya changed their name. It's right in Madhya Lila, chapter 1. My dear Dabir Kas, you two brothers are my old servants. My dear Sakra Malik, from this day your names will be changed to Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatana. Now, please abandon your humility, for my heart is breaking to see you so humble. Now, there were pictures of humility, and at the same time, they were very wise. Particularly Sanatana Gosvami was very wise. Now, picture in your mind being uncomfortable that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was visiting you. He was uncomfortable, and he expressed his discomfort because he knew the Nawab. He said, this man's a madman. Today he's being very nice to you, but who knows, tomorrow he may try to kill you. He's a madman. So I don't advise that you remain. As much as we want your association, my advice is don't stick around. And then he had a second advice. You're traveling with tens of thousands of disciples and followers. That's not good to enter Vrindavan like that. Rather, my recommendation is you consider, go back to Puri, deposit your followers, and go to Vrindavan with just one assistant. Go alone or go with one assistant. I mean, he's so elevated he can advise Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in etiquette and protection. But that's the kind of person. And he did it in such a way Mahaprabhu understood it wasn't insolence. So he considered that, he said, yes, you're right. So he returned back to Puri, and shortly after he left, the two of the three brothers left their government service. The two of the three brothers that left their government service were Rupa and Anupam, and they had enormous savings of wealth, so many gold coins. It's described that Rupa Goswami filled up a boat with gold coins, and in an exemplary way, did nice teaching. It's something that Prabhupada repeated many times. An exemplary standard was half of that savings was distributed to the Vaishnavas, 50%. 25% went to family members for their well-being and maintenance, etc. And the other 25% was for emergency. So the emergency money became useful later. You'll hear. So it's just Sanatana Goswami remained in Ramakeli doing his service, and after some time he started sending messages to the king saying that he was not well, so he couldn't come into the office and do his various duties. So here he is dressed as a mendicant, although he's in the role of the prime minister. Here's another BBT painting. So the king sent the royal physician to check him out. The royal physician reported his health is fine. He's telling you lies. He's not unhealthy. So here's the king, and the king just burst into the assembly where Sanatan, had many brahmanas in the assembly, and they were engaged in Krishna Katha together and brahminical activities together. So the king confronted him, as you see from the body language, and asked, what's your intention? I understand you're not ill, because your royal physician confirmed. So why you're not coming to do your duty? And I have no interest in continuing on in this service. He was straightforward. And so the king decided he could kill him, but he might be able to reform him, so instead he put him in prison. So this is a photograph of the prison. It's a pretty formidable prison. You don't break out of that prison so easily. and where Sanatan was held as a prisoner. Some time passed, and Sanatan, being very wise, made friendship with the prison guard. And after some days of friendship with the prison guard, because Sanatana Goswami is not just a manipulator, he's an elevated person. He was able to move the heart of the prison guard. And he, in a very flattering way, is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing the wonderful qualities of the prison guard, and you'll get so much benefit if you can give liberation to another person. So please liberate me from prison, and you'll get much pious credit. And in addition, I'll make some arrangement that you can have 7,000 gold coins. There was the smaller number, but it ended up being 7,000. And the prison guard said, "No way, I can't do this. I'll be killed if Nawab understands that I released you from prison." So he had an answer already. The answer was, you can tell the Nawab that Sanatan had to pass stool. So he went by the side of the river with his iron chains around his wrists. He jumped in the river and drowned. And you searched for him and couldn't find him. Tell him like that. And in addition, he gave, double the amount, from 3,500 gold coin to 7,000. And the guard let him go. A bribery. Now, that's a no-no. We don't follow the example of Sanatana Goswami and offer bribes to people. We don't do that. But he was Sanatana Goswami, and he did it. But we don't follow that example, just in case there's some doubt, or some whisper in the back room. You hear something. We don't do that. And ultimately, for service to Krishna, some exception. In the case of Sanatana Goswami, he made an exception to what you don't do, and he did it anyways. So he began traveling at nights through jungles and wild places because he didn't want to be found, and he was trying to move swiftly. He had one assistant with him. The assistant's name was Ishan. They came to a hilly tract of land, and they found that there was an inn somewhere in this up in the hills. An inn. Now the innkeeper had a friend, and the innkeeper's friend was an astrologer. An astrologer did some astrological reading and told the innkeeper, "I've got some good news for you. Someone's going to be coming here very soon, and they're carrying with them a vast amount of wealth. I bet you can get that wealth from them because you're the innkeeper." And the innkeeper started rubbing his hands together, thinking, aha. So when Sanatana Goswami, aristocratic gentleman, dressed in rough clothing, reached the inn, that the innkeeper treated him with such kindness and nice food and nice place to stay and kind words, Sanatana Goswami put two and two together and said, this man's he wants something. So he asked his assistant, Ishan, tell me, do you have some gold coins with you? And Ishan said, yes, I have some gold coins with me. And Sanatan said, give them to me. This is going to be the cause of our death, both of us, because the innkeeper is treating us too nicely. He wants the gold coins. So I'm going to give him the gold coins, and I'll save a gold coin or two for you, so we're going to separate from each other, because this could be problematic. So he spoke to the innkeeper and very nicely and said, you've treated us so nicely. I want to reciprocate with you. Here's some gold coins. the innkeeper confessed. He said, it's good that you've given this to me, because otherwise tonight I was going to kill you and steal the gold coins. Because my astrologer told me you got some gold coins with you. But because you generously, very kindly gave them to me, you saved me from the sin of murdering. So let me see if there's something I can do for you. He said, yes, you can help me get across this hilly tract of land. So the innkeeper did like that. Here's the 8 gold coins that Ishan had, or it's an image meant to show like that. And so Sanatana Gosvami continued in the northern section of India, heading for Vrindavan, because he knew that's where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going to go back to Puri. His plan was then to go to Vrindavan with just one servant, so he knew the plan, and he was hoping to rendezvous with him somewhere. Now, those of you that have been in India, traveling by foot in the hilly tracts of land, and hope you're going to bump into one person, best of luck to you. But they bumped into each other in Varanasi. So here's a series of maps, and you have to watch the footprints, because it's going to show a yellow set of footprints. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, starting from Jagannath Puri, and look at in the upper left, that's Vrindavan. And he's going to go to Vrindavan from Jagannath Puri, but he doesn't go to Vrindavan. He goes to Shantipur to pay his respects to, who lives in Shantipur? Advaita Acharya. So he spends time in Shantipur with Advaita Acharya, and then he goes straight to Ramakeli. And when he's in Ramakeli, who does he meet? But Rupa and Sanatan. And then this exchange that we saw already, and Sanatan advises him, don't go with 10,000 followers. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decides to go back to Puri, stops in Shantipur on the way, and he goes to Jagannath Puri. Meanwhile, then he starts making his way to Vrindavan. Goes through the Jharkhand forest, he goes to Varanasi, and then he goes to Prayag. Things happen in those places, and then he goes to Vrindavan. And he stays in Vrindavan for some time, not too long. Then he starts making his way back to Puri. On his way back to Puri, he stops in Prayag. And in Prayag, he's going to meet Rupa Goswami first. And then in Varanasi, he's going to meet Sanatana Gosvami. So at Prayag, there he is. Now, after Ramakeli, Rupa went with this boatload of gold coins and distributed, as was already described, and 1/4 of that wealth went to family members. They live somewhere in Bengal, so he distributed. And then he, that's the white color, made his way to Prayag, and there he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this chronology gets confusing. That's why I did all this with maps, because it's not so clear, at least for me. So they spent time together in Prayag. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after instructing and enlivening Rupa Goswami, he assigned to him Vrindavan as his place of residence, and said, after some time, you can come see me again in Puri. So that happened. So from Prayag, he went to Varanasi, and there's Rupa Goswami going to Vrindavan, where he stayed for some time. Meanwhile, there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu going to Varanasi, and now here's, in the pink color, that's Sanatana Gosvami. So he's going across the ramparts, meeting the innkeeper. He's with Ishan. He meets Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Varanasi and spends some time receiving instruction from him in Varanasi. And after some time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again travels back to Puri through Jharkhand forest, and Sanatana Goswami, as he was instructed, he went to Vrindavan. But note, as he's going simultaneously, he's going in a southern route, Rupa Goswami is going in a northern route, and Rupa Goswami is heading to go to spend time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. Got it? Some of you got it. The younger generation people got it. Some of the other persons are like, what's going on here? They're brothers, but they didn't meet up until later. So there's Rupa, the little white footprints he's going to from Vrindavan, goes to Prayag, goes to Varanasi, he passes through Bengal, spends a little bit of time with his relatives again, and then meets up with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. Meanwhile, Sanatana Goswami, that pink dot up there in the upper left, he is in Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu authorized him, after some time you can come see me in Puri. So after Rupa Goswami spent some time with Mahaprabhu in Puri, he went back through Bengal, and while he's in Bengal, this is Sanatana Goswami traveling through, and he goes through Jharkhand forest. He contracts a disease by drinking water in a place where he shouldn't have taken water, and gets wet itches, and that becomes a big problem for him. Not for him, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likes to embrace him, and he feels terrible because he's going to try to embrace me, and I'll smear all this smelly, liquidy, pussy stuff all over his body. So he doesn't know what to do. He decides, I'll see Mahaprabhu in Puri and give up my life in Puri because I don't want to make this offense. That's Sanatana Goswami. So he went and spent 2 months with Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, and some things happened we'll see shortly. That's it for the map. So now we're going to go more closely to the first time they met in Varanasi. This is what happened after this scene with Ishan and the innkeeper. Sanatana Goswami was traveling. He came across a residential place where one of his relatives lived. And he told this whole story to the relative. He left the government service, blah, blah, blah. And his relative treated him very nicely. He gave him proper clothing. He gave him a nice blanket. This becomes an important item, an expensive-looking blanket. And when he meets Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the house of Chandrasekhar, another Vaishnava that was living in Varanasi, Mahaprabhu embraces him, as he liked to do. And in the course of their exchange, Mahaprabhu was very happy to see, at last you got released from the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. But he kept glancing at the blanket. And Sanatana Goswami, being very wise, understood he didn't like it. And so he went to the Ganges to take his bath and saw one sadhu by the shore of the Ganges, and who had also taken his bath and had a torn quilt lying out in the sand to dry. So he approached the sadhu and said, "Can I exchange my blanket for your torn quilt?" The sadhu said, "This isn't nice. Don't tease it. You're a respectable gentleman. I'm a very poor sadhu, so don't tease me like this." And he said, "I'm not teasing. I want to give you my blanket for your torn quilt." So the man agreed. And when Mahaprabhu saw him again, giving up that remnant, and there was some exchange with Mahaprabhu, the position of renunciation is you don't hold on to worldly opulence. your life is moving in the direction of renunciation, keep going. And don't hold on to your worldly opulence. At this particular time, Srila Prabhupada explained, it's not, I haven't been able to find it anywhere, but Prabhupada describes it, so it must be somewhere, that during this period of time they're together in Varanasi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave sannyas and sannyas attire to Sanatana Gosvami. And the illustration is depicting, there's two versions, this one, and then there's this one, with straw in the street. Sanatana Gosvami is now asking his questions, two questions, celebrated questions that when you hear Prabhupada lectures, you hear them hundreds of times and hundreds of times. Who am I? First question. Learned Brahmana, highly elevated person asking, who am I? And the second, why do the threefold miseries always give me trouble? Tapatraya. Why do they always give me trouble? Now, what are they? What medicine can I get rid of to get rid of illness? Why? Why am I subjected to miseries I don't want? Why are all of us subjected to miseries we don't want? Miseries inflicted by other living entities, miseries afflicted by material nature, miseries inflicted by our mind and body. Why? And that's how the discussion began. And you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita in detail. There's the very lengthy section is known as the Sanatana Shiksha section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And at the end of that section, here's the conclusion, or a conclusion. O Sanatana, 4 things. You should broadcast revealed scriptures on devotional service and excavate the lost places of pilgrimage in the district of Mathura. Establish devotional service to Lord Krishna and Radharani in Vrindavan. You should also compile bhakti scriptures and preach the bhakti cult from Vrindavan. So 4 instructions. Now, I'm combining to make it simple. This exchange is part of the exchange that happened when Sanatana Gosvami came to Puri. So when he reached Puri after 1 year being in Vrindavan, he went straight to Puri to get an association, but on the way, he contracted this water drinking disease, contaminated water, that resulted in his body getting it, Prabhupada calls it weeping itches. There's 2 kinds of itches, dry and wet, weeping, medical. So sore on your body that itches, but it doesn't just itch, it produces a pussy, yucky, smelly thing, and all over his body. And so when he noticed this condition, he felt really bad, because as the painting shows, Mahaprabhu wanted to embrace him. So this is when he decided, when reaching Puri, I'll visit him, I'll take his association, and then I'll commit suicide. And he had different ideas of how he would commit suicide. One of his ideas was he would attend Rath Yatra, and when the Rath Yatra cart was coming, he'd throw his body underneath the Rath Yatra wheel and get crushed and die in front of Lord Jagannath. He didn't say anything to anybody. But Mahaprabhu was omniscient, and he instructed him, without his saying anything to anybody, you can't commit suicide. If it was so easy to get liberation just committing suicide, we'd all do it. That's not how you get liberation. Rather, you've surrendered to me, I have planned for this body, you can't destroy this body, it's not your property anymore. It belongs to me. And I have plans for this body. So checkmate. And then he embraced him and his sores went away. It's a nice story. And it happened. And then Sanatana Goswami could understand he's omniscient and he's all-powerful. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he remained with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 1 year in Jagannath Puri. And one of the places that they spent time together was at Yameshwara Tota. Tota means garden. And if there's a particular place in Puri known as Yameshwara Tota, where the deity of Gopinath is. So here's the entrance. They're painted differently, different colors at different years, but you get the idea. And then inside, through the gate, you see there's a entryway to the temple, and inside the entryway to the temple, there's the deity of Gopinath. So Radha, Gopinath, and Lalita. And notice carefully from the painting, you can see the deity is not standing, the deity is sitting. And there's a reason. Because the deity was standing, but it was difficult, because the deity is quite tall, it was difficult for the pujari, who was Gadadhar Pandit, to put garlands and turbans and crowns and things, so the deity sat down to make it easier for him to decorate the deity. Pretty amazing, huh? And here's another amazing detail. In that sitting posture, one of the knees, the left knee of the deity, has a little mark. And it is said that little mark is the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the body of the deity when he departed this world. He was in the temple, suddenly stood up, went straight towards the deity, and entered into the body of the deity through the deity's knee. Pretty incredible. Special deity, very, very beloved deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. And one time when he was going to visit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to visit him at Tota Gopinath, he didn't want to go in front of, because there's a shorter way, a direct way. You go past the Jagannath temple, but he thought, because my body is this messy, degraded body, I may bump into one of the pujaris, so I don't want to do that, so I'll go by the path by the sea. But the path by the sea, in the middle part of the day, it's so hot that his feet were burning. And when he reached the other side, Mahaprabhu asked him, what happened to your feet? And he explained why. And Mahaprabhu just, embraced him again. Your humility is too much. Take care of your body, please. Now, there's a little detail that the source of this is indicated, Garga Samhita. According to Garga Samhita, the great grandson of Krishna, we could go through the lineage, but the great grandson of Krishna was named Vajranabh. Vajranabh was given rulership in Braja, and one of the things that he did in Braja was he established 8 principal deities of Krishna. The first 4, one was directly in Mathura, a Vishnu deity or Keshava deity. It's a celebrated deity within the line of Chaitanya, a lot of Bhaktisiddhanta, Keshava Gaudiya Math, the Keshava deity. And in Vrindavan, Govindadev, Haridwar, and in the southern part, in Gokul, was Baladev. It's a very nice deity. The Baladev deity is very powerful, Balaram deity. And near Govardhan Hill, by Manasi Ganga, there's a nice deity of Haridev. And of course in Vrindavan town, Govindaji deity. So rather than going through all the names, there were two Naths, Srinathji and Gopinath. Different than the Gopinath in Puri, there's a Gopinath that was in Vrindavan and later with other deities was shifted for safety's sake to Jaipur. The Srinathji was found or discovered or revealed to Madhavendra Puri, worshipped on the side of Govardhan Hill. Followers of Ballabhacharya, they liked the deity very much. There's details and details. And now that same deity, Srinathji, is a Natadwar, worshipped by the Ballabhacharya followers, principally, at least the pujaris. And then there were two Gopals, Madan Gopal, that became eventually Madan Mohan, and the Shakshi Gopal. We all know the story of Shakshi Gopal. So here's a little bit about the Gopal, because we're speaking about Sanatana Gosvami. Madan Gopal has been famous as Madan Mohan in the world. Sriman Madan Gopal also exists within Vrindavan. Gopal lives eternally. This is Bhakti Ratnakar. Gopal lives eternally as a boy. Govinda exists as a matured youth. And Gopinath is most beautiful. Gopal is of a calm but proud disposition. Govinda is calm and broad-hearted. And Gopinath is of a calm and gentle disposition. Gopal is lion-necked. Govinda stands in a threefold bending posture. And Gopinath is a flirt with a broad chest. So these correspond the Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, features of transcendental knowledge and of modes of worship. So Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath, the deity, presiding deities of those three categories of the teachings of bhakti. And the Madan Gopal deity was the first to be found. It was established by Vajranabha in this history of the 8 deities that he established, and then they were lost. All the deities were lost. And this one deity was eventually found. And the deity was found by the side of the river Jamuna, because at one point in time the course of the river Jamuna shifts, and underneath a banyan tree there was this deity. And one Brahmana from Mathura found the deity in Vrindavan. So he liked the deity very much. Madan Gopal was the name of the deity. And he took him back to his home in Mathura. But something happened. The Purushottam Chaubey was a Brahmana, and he had a young son, and his young son would play with the deity. The deity would play with his young son. Very, very personable deity. And he was very, very attached to the deity and vice versa. But one day, in a dream, the deity, Madan Gopal, appeared to him in his dream and instructed him, I want to be worshipped by a Brahmana who lives in Vrindavan. Take me to him. I want to be worshipped by him, Sanatana. So he was very sad because he was very attached to his deity, but the deity wanted to be worshipped by Sanatana. So he went to visit Sanatana. And Sanatana said, no, I'm a mendicant. How can I worship a deity? I don't have a place to put the deity. I don't have anything to offer the deity. Thanks, but no thanks. But the deity wants to be worshipped by, I don't have I'm not qualified. Thanks, but no thanks. So the Brahmana was disappointed and very enlivened at the same time. He went back to Mathura. That very night he had again another dream. The deity said, go again, and he'll say yes this time. That same night, the deity appeared in Sanatana Goswami's dream. It said, say yes. And in his dream, how can I say yes? Because I'm a mendicant, I don't have anything. Whatever you offer, I'll accept. It's okay. I don't have a place to put you. I don't have a temple. That's okay. Put me under a tree. Whatever objection is just okay. So the next day, the Mathura Brahmin, Chobe, came and he said yes. So there they are, Sanatana Goswami and his deity. Now the deity of Madan Gopal is one of these bas-relief deities, which means a deity that's not 360 around, but there's a flat surface and the deity is carved from that flat surface behind the deity, bas-relief deity they call. And so whatever Sanatana Goswami had, some persons would come and bring him, chapati. And he offered the chapati, whatever he had, he offered to the deity. And so one night in his dream, the deity said, little salt, please. This chapatis are dry and stale, and just a little salt, please. Sanatan was like upset. Come on. I told you I didn't have the qualification. You go back and be worshipped by Chobe. He has a nice place. He can take care of you. The very next day, you hear the drum roll and the trumpets and the enthusiasm. A merchant ship going up the river Jamuna got stuck on a sandbar. And taking the form of a cowherd boy, Madan Gopal went to advise the rich merchant, Krishnadas Kapoor. Up there, see that big hill? Up on top of that hill, there's a saint named Sanatana Goswami, and he certainly can help you, because he's a saint. So, what to do? Krishnadas Kapoor, the salt merchant, climbed up the hill and asked Sanatan what to do about the boat. Sanatan said, see my deity, pray to the deity and he'll take care of it. So, sure enough, that very day and night, very heavy rain, the boat was unstuck. And he went upstream and he sold everything at the marketplace, and he then came back and saw Sanatan made a pledge. I made a big profit from selling this boatload of salt, so I'd like to make a donation to you. He said, I don't need anything, but you can build a temple for my deity. So he built the temple for the deity. That's that temple, that Madan Mohan temple. He gives the date. In 1573, Emperor Akbar gave Jiva Goswami permission to construct 4 temples in Vrindavan. The temple of Madan Mohan was one of them. Now, this salt merchant Krishnadas Kapoor didn't pay for all of them. Others paid for some of them. But he took care of Madan Mohan temple. And is completed some years later, along with some land for production of grains to maintain the temple and the deity. When the temple was completed, according to the history, this is when Sanatana Goswami started identifying the deity as Madan Mohan instead of Madan Gopal. This is a British period of time painting. And here's an actual photograph of the place, as you can see up on a hill. And by the side of the temple is a little pink structure. that's where Sanatana Gosvami had his bhajan kutir. And by the side of the bhajan kutir, there's a well. Now, it's a well-known fact from the people that live in Vrindavan. When you dig wells, often it's salty water, but this particular well was fresh water. So he was able to drink water from the well and serve the deity the water from the fresh water well. It's unique for that geographic location. Compliments of Madan Mohan. Here's an aerial picture. This is a group of devotees with the river Jamuna in the background, and many devotees assembled having their parikrama. Another angle from apparently some kind of a zoom camera on whatever it is. So there's the steps leading up to the temple, and the inside of the temple is where the deity was. Now there's the replacement deities there because the original deity was taken to Jaipur and then to Karoli. You saw photographs of the original Madan Mohan. As time passed, several generations later, one of the great Vaishnavas, we mentioned his name already, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, had heard all about Chaitanya's activities in Puri from Raghunath Das Goswami, because Raghunath Das Goswami was residing at that time at Radhakund, as was, they were neighbors, immediately adjacent living spaces. So Krishnadas heard everything about Gaura Lila, and he was in his 90s, very old man, lame, and his hands trembling because of his age. But everyone said, you got to write all of what you've heard from Raghunath Das Goswami. But he was feeling not qualified, so he went to the Madan Mohan deity and prayed before the Madan Mohan deity. And as a sign from the deity, a garland fell from his neck. And the pujari placed it around his neck, and he, as the sign that he had Madan Mohan's blessings. So here's what he writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Actually, Chaitanya Charitamrita is not my writing, but the dictation of Sri Madan Mohan. My writing is like the repetition of a parrot. As a wooden doll is made to dance by a magician, I write as Madan Gopal orders me to do so. Glory to the All-Merciful, Radha and Madan Mohan. I am lame and ill-advised, yet they are my directors, and their lotus feet are everything to me. The mercy of Lord Nityananda showed me Sri Madan Mohan and gave me Sri Madan Mohan as my Lord and Master. I accept as my family deity, Madan Mohan. Very, very powerful deity, very merciful deity, very playful deity, very easily attracting the hearts of those who worship this particular deity. So originally the deity was just Madan Mohan. And there's a little bit of history of how the deity by the side, Lita and Radharani, all the way from Puri, the son of the king, brought the deity, these two deities. There's some detail, but that's okay. From Purushottam Jana, the deities were of Radha by one side and Lita by the other side were arranged for these deities. A little bit of that history. And there's the original deity. And then they got shifted from Jaipur to Karoli, as just mentioned. The text is here. The princess of Jaipur agreed to marry the prince of Karoli if she could bring Madan Mohan with her. to Karoli because she was too attached. Otherwise she wasn't going to marry this guy. So the deity moved. And there, to this day, there's the deity. And here's another very close-up photograph of the deity, very sweet and merciful deity. And another nice photograph. You see at the bottom of this, the images are just simply succession. This is a replica, but this is the actual deity in Jaipur, in Karoli. Very nice. There's a nice pastime. In Vrindavan, the worship of the deity is sometimes very, 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 that's three varies, personalized. So there's a situation in Krishna's pastimes where Krishna was engaged in rasa dance with the gopis, and Krishna became very tired and he took rest. And when he took rest, Radharani stole his flute. And the flute was then given to the gopis. And when Krishna woke up and his flute was missing, he came to Radharani and pleaded to Radharani for his flute back because he was attached to his flute. And they agreed on a condition. Here, I'll just read the text. Radharani, as you see, tucked in her belt is a sword. So Radharani would become king, and Krishna become her doorkeeper. That he's got a shield. So he was protecting the entrance to her palace, being the guard. So there's, on a particular day, once a year, they reenact this pastime with this particular feature. And here's a nice painting of the pastime of the gopis stealing Krishna's flute. In Vrindavan town, when the original Madan Mohan were taken, there's a replacement or Pratibhu deity in Vrindavan town, and that's the deity that you see here. In addition to Vrindavan town, there's a place where Sanatana Gosvami stayed for some time by the side of Shamakund. You see on the left, there's a drawing of Shamakund. It's not exactly rectangular like Radhakund, there's history behind. But where you see that red circle, that's where he had his little bhajan kutir and Radha Mohan deity. And the photograph on the right is what you see when you come from the road and you're approaching the Madan Mohan temple. And on the right side, there's the Madan Mohan deity. On the left side is little bhajan kutir, where Sanatana Gosvami resided for some part of his time in Vrindavan. In the same Bhakti Ratnakar, there's many I mentioned, you remember, histories of what took place amongst Lord Chaitanya's associates, other than what's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This one of the celebrated places in Vrindavan is the place where there's a temple that was constructed by a king in memory of his queens. And on the ceiling, there's this painting, and a whole series of paintings of a pastime of Krishna's combing Radharani's hair, and Radharani's looking at Krishna in a mirror. This is a scene from Kusum Sarovar. Many of you know where that place is. By the side of Govardhan Hill. Let me see a show of hands. Who knows about Kusum Sarovar? And that the pastime connected with Kusum Sarovar is described in Bhakti Ratnakar. So in the same Bhakti Ratnakar, there's a nice description, one of many. And in this nice description, there was a period of time where both Rupa and Sanatan were residing by the side of Radhakund, Shyamakund. And Rupa Goswami wanted his elder brother to examine his writing. So he brought some of the manuscript for his elder brother to examine. And when he was editing or examining what Rupa Goswami had written, there was a passage that he didn't feel comfortable with. And the passage that he didn't feel comfortable with was, there was a description in Rupa Goswami's manuscript of Radharani having long braid going down her back looking like a snake. And he thought, that's not nice. How can you describe Radharani's braid in that kind of a metaphor? So he was feeling uncomfortable about that language. And then he took a break, he went to take his midday bath at Shyamakund, and from where, when you go sometime, you look over on the other side of where he resided, there's a place called Manasa Pavan Ghat. It's a bathing ghat on the other side of Shyamakund from where he was residing. And he saw on that other side there were some young girls, young village girls, gathering water from Radhakund, from Shyamakund, and they were storing it and carrying the pots, and he noticed from where he was standing that up the back of one of the gopis was a snake. So he called out very loudly, "Look out! There's a snake crawling up your back!" And the girls turned, smiled at him, and then poof, all of a sudden they disappeared. Like poof. So then he realized this was Krishna's arrangement, so that I could understand. That was a very nice expression that my brother used. The braid of Radharani looking like a snake, because that's what it looked like to me. And that's what that was. It was Radharani. So the next time his brother came, how'd you like my writing? Oh, I liked it very much, especially like that part, metaphor that you used, describing Radharani's braid. All of this is from Bhakti Ratnakar. Here's another little passage from Bhakti Ratnakar. Oh, my brothers and sisters, please be very careful in dealing with Vaishnavas. Give them even your breath, so they will forgive your offenses. Be careful. Do not see Vaishnavas' faults. Always praise the Vaishnavas. The ancient great devotees say, no one understands the ways of Vaishnavas, though through his dear devotees, Lord Chaitanya has taught this truth to us. Hold the devotee's lotus feet to your head and dive into the nectar of pure devotional service. You hear that music? Mande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo is a refrain of the Sad Goswami Astakam. So here's another place. From time to time, Sanatan stayed at different places, as you can see. So one of those places was by the side of Pavan Sarovar. Where's Pavan Sarovar? Pavan Sarovar is at the base of Nandagram. Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, and their ancestral home, and little Krishna would stay up there. And every morning, his father and Krishna would come down the hill and take their bath at Pavan Sarovar. So it was a very special place. And so Sanatana Goswami kept the bhajan kutir at that particular place. And you see the photograph, that's Dinabandhu. His classical stance, giving a pastime, a tour of a pastime of Krishna that took place here. Here's the pastime that took place here. When Sanatana Goswami was residing here, and this is from Bhakti Ratnakar, he was fastening because he was accustomed to. It's similar to Madhavendra Puri. The Paramahansa stage, the Paramahansa would fast unless somebody brought something, so he was just fasting. And a little boy came and brought him some milk. And it's very similar to how the pastime with Madhavendra Puri happened. And he said, how did you know I was fasting? He said, the ladies of the village said, but you took so much trouble and you're such a small boy, and so little exchange with this young boy, and the little boy said, you're such a nice sadhu, and the people of the village wanted you to not go hungry, and I've got to take care of milking the cows, so I have to go now. So he just turned and poof, disappeared. And Sanatana Gosvami could understand that little boy that came and brought the milk, that was Krishna. And Krishna's mercy, Krishna's maintaining his devotee. And he did very similar to the pastime with Madhavendra Puri, right here in this location where he was doing his bhajan. So he felt intense reciprocation, naturally so. Krishna's bringing him sustenance when he wasn't eager and feeling great hunger. So he then, as a result, Sanatana Goswami understood Krishna doesn't want me to do this austerity of fasting. And so he resided for some time in this location and performed madhukari. Madhukari means the sannyasi would extend their cloth and accept alms from from homes of people that reside. And because he's Sanatana Goswami and a sannyasi anyways, his necessities were provided very happily. So that's how he sustained his life and had this very nice description of interaction with Krishna directly. And this is the place where that pastime occurred. Inside these two arches, there's the entryway, and this is now, they built it up very nicely. It was just, in the middle of a forest area. He, during his 40 years of living in Vrindavan, had many roles to play, besides his interactions with Krishna, but many roles of giving leadership and setting an example for all the Vrajbasis, because they knew who he was, and they respected him like anything. So all of his character and conduct and speech set the standard for the whole of Vrindavan. Must have been a very sublime situation. Here's a celebrated painting. I'll quickly tell the story because it's already 8:25. We've gone for 2 hours. You're all still here somehow. So I'll try to finish. This is a painting where Rupa Goswami at Ter Kadamba, not far from that place where Sanatana Goswami had his bhajan kutir at near Pavan Sarovar. So he's under a Kadamba tree. You can see those little flowers that are round in shape. And he's writing and writing and writing. But he's also meditating on that particular day was the birthday, the appearance day of his brother. So he was thinking, I'm this mendicant, I don't have any kitchen, I don't have any facility, I don't have anything, but it'd be really nice to offer my brother some gift. It'd be nice to offer some sweet rice on his birthday. So lo and behold, some young village girl, whose name happened to be Radharani, came down the path and offered to him some milk and some rice and some gur with which he could make some sweet rice. He said, how did you know? He said, well, everyone knows it's your brother's birthday, and we thought you might like to make some nice sweet rice. So you can take these items and make some sweet rice for your brother. But I have to go now. And she turned and poof, disappeared. Just like that. so he could understand. So Rupa Goswami could understand the omniscience and the mercy of Krishna and Radha, just because he had a desire to render some nice service for his brother. I'm going to go quickly for a very nice story. Many of you know the story. Sanatana Goswami had a touchstone. And in Vrindavan, there was another very poor man, very poor Brahmin, a householder, and he was unable to maintain his family because he was so poor. But he got this bright idea. Sanatana Goswami is known to be very generous. Surely he'll give some charity to a Brahmana. And maybe if I ask him for that touchstone, he'll give me his touchstone. And then I can take care of my family. So he went to Sanatana Goswami's Bhajan Kutir and asked for the touchstone, with nice words of appreciation. You're a Brahmana, you're very generous. Is it possible so I can maintain my family? We're very poor. You have a touchstone. He said, yeah, I have a touchstone. Could you give it in charity? Oh yeah, sure. Where is it? It's over the rubbish pile. So he went over to the rubbish pile, and sure enough, there was Sanatana Goswami's touchstone. And he went back to his home. He had an iron pot by his door. And he touched the touchstone to the iron pot, and it turned into gold. Then he gathered some other iron articles, and more gold and more gold and more gold, and he did some quick math and said, gosh, if you keep this in the garbage pile, he's got to have something more valuable. He's certainly very generous, so maybe if I ask him for that more valuable something, he'll give me the more valuable something. You know the story. So he went back, and Sanatana Goswami said, sure, I have something much more valuable than a touchstone. Would you like it? Sure, but one thing, you got to throw the touchstone into the river. He looked at the touchstone, looked at Sanatana Goswami, looked at the touchstone, looked at Sanatana Goswami, and threw it in the river. And you know what he gave him, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So quickly, because time is passing. One time, Jagatananda Pandit, a very interesting Vaishnava with a very interesting personality, he was visiting Vrindavan. And when he was visiting Vrindavan, he stayed with Sanatana Goswami. And when he was staying with Sanatana Goswami, he was cooking for Sanatana Goswami's Madan, Mohan deity. And he's in the kitchen, and he noticed that Sanatana Goswami is wearing this turban. And he asked him, where'd you get that turban? And he said, oh, one sannyasi, Makunda Saraswati, gave me this turban. And while he's cooking, Jagatananda raised the cooking pot and was ready to smash him in the head and yelled at him, scolded him severely. What? You're such a dear devotee of Mahaprabhu, and you're wearing a turban given to you by somebody else. How can you do this? And started, did the Jagatananda Pandit. He went off. And then he checked himself. He was going to hit Sanatana Goswami with his pot in his head. And he dropped the pot and, apologized. And Sanatana Goswami said, you have such love for Mahaprabhu. If only I had a drop of the love that you have for Mahaprabhu, my life would be perfect. It is said, I can't tell all the stories because of time. I'm just going to have to. So, he slept 2 to 3 hours every day. That's kind of unhuman or inhuman. But that's what he did at his age. And at night there's no light, so he used leaves, whatever he could gather, so he could continue writing his books at night. Whew. Another celebrated story, you see this is a cave with an alligator in the cave. And something happened. Because one time, it involves Sanatana Gosvami. One time, there was a learned acharya that came to visit Rupa Goswami, and he wanted very much for Rupa Goswami to read his writings and critique his writings. And Jiva Goswami happened to be there. And Jiva Goswami was asked by Rupa Goswami, take this acharya to the river Jamuna so he could take his bath. And when Jiva Goswami was walking with this acharya, I'm purposely not mentioning his name because it gets a little confusing. So, I'll say it. There's different Balaba. There's the Balaba Acharya, who is the head of the Pushti Marg, and then there's another Balaba that has the same Balaba name, but it's not the same Balaba. In any case, Balaba, this learned Vaishnava, was critiquing Rupa Goswami's writings. Rupa Goswami asked the Brahmana, could you read some of my writings and evaluate? So Jiva Goswami gave him a tongue lashing. Who are you? You have no idea who's Rupa Goswami. How can you have the audacity to be willing to edit his writings? You have no idea who he is, and spoke strongly. And when they came back after bathing in the river Jamuna, the Balaba said to Rupa, your nephew, he's really strong, isn't he? He gave me a good tongue lashing. And Rupa then later said to Jiva, there's no place for you in Vrindavan. You're disrespectful to a much senior, much elder person to you. You should leave Vrindavan. Leave Vrindavan. Jiva Goswami leave Vrindavan. He was smashed, not just being scolded by Rupa, but leave Vrindavan. So he walked along the river Jamuna. He found a hole along the side of the river Jamuna where an alligator had his home. That's what the painting is showing. And that made that his new home. And Sanatan later found that Jiva was missing. And so he asked what happened, and Jiva Goswami, Rupa told him, I told him, you can't stay in Vrindavan. So Sanatana went to find Jiva. He found him in this alligator hole, and then he came back to speak to his younger brother. It's very nice. You maybe at least half of you or more in the room already know the punchline. So when he came back, Rupa, yes, according to the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is the most important qualification of a Vaishnava? Jivadaya, being compassionate upon all jivas. Well, I know one jiva that needs your compassion. He's devastated, and he's your nephew. So show your daya to this one important jiva. Allow him. He's very repentant. He won't make the same mistake again. He feels he's been misunderstood. Please give him your mercy. Rupa could understand. His elder brother, whatever he says, that's what I'll do. And he accepted him back. This is a place where, by the side of this is by the side of Shamakund. This is his Bhajan Kutir place, and very near, proximate to where he was residing, was a place where Shankaleshwara Mahadev, 5 deities, Kshetrapal Shiva deities, protect the Dham. Very, very proximate. So he liked that place. He regularly offered his respects to Shakaleshwara Mahadev, the protector of the Dham. Here's the deity during the festival season. Here's the deity being nicely decorated. And there's a problem. That is, where there's a body of water during certain seasons, there's a lot of mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes were too many. So he decided, too many, I'm going to leave. And when he decided like that to leave, Lord Shiva personally came and pleaded with him, don't leave, I'll keep the mosquitoes away. Okay. It is said from that day forward until today, there's no mosquitoes in that particular place, even during mosquito season. Towards the concluding portion of his life, Sanatana Goswami was quite elderly. It was difficult for him to circumambulate Govardhan Hill, which he liked doing every day. And so Krishna came before him and said, Sanatana, you're an old person, you don't need to do this. This is a regulation, but you're beyond the stage of regulation. Sanatana Goswami said, I have to. So he said, then I'll place my foot in this Govardhan Shila, and you circumambulate the Govardhan Shila. It's the same as circumambulating Govardhan Hill. That's a painting of the same pastime, and here's a painting of the same pastime. And Sanatana Goswami then, for the rest of his life, circumambulated this Shila. When he left his body, that Shila was taken to the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. And if you make a request with a few rupees in your hand, they'll show you this nice Shila, Govardhan Shila with Krishna's footprint in it, that's being maintained there at that temple, the Radha Damodar temple. And his body was taken in procession, grand procession, this is his disappearance day celebration, to the place up on top of the back side of the Madan Mohan temple is his samadhi. So this is what the samadhi looked like at one point in time. And you can see those three spires over the samadhi. They built a little area in the front so you can get shade. And then this is the same place, so they painted it up so it's a nice color now, with the same checker tiles in front. And inside, there's where his samadhi is, and there's the same painting that's on the altar right here of Sanatana Goswami. And 2 hours and 12 minutes later, the end. So, in honor of a great Acharya, such an important personality amongst the 6 Goswamis, we're very happy to say so many things, and there's many more things to say about such an exalted personality. We're deeply indebted, certainly we're deeply indebted to Rupa Goswami, and as well Sanatana Goswami, because Rupa looked up to Sanatana Goswami, as many that know the relationship. He liked being in the service of Sanatana Goswami. And any Vaishnava, but particularly that was their relationship, the elder brother, younger brother. And he was qualified. He gave guidance and direction to all the Goswamis and all the residents of Vrindavan during his lifetime. And his books, as you know, read Brihat Bhagavatamrita if you want to know about devotional service devotees and the method of living a proper lifestyle. The manner of his writing is very exquisite, different than the other Goswamis. But the imprint of his personality is there in his writings. Very wonderful. Quarter to 9. I think we should just end. And I was asked when I came in, would I like to offer some flower to Prabhupada because of Guru Puja and also to Sanatana Gosvami. So I'm going to do that. And then I think what you all can, you know what to do, to take prasadam, right? So did you, before coming here to Portland, some devotees in Naperville were very kind. They gave me a half a suitcase full of Mahaprasadam. And it didn't tilt the scale. I was still able to check in my luggage. And so I get to walk around to distribute some Mahaprasadam. Srila Sanatana Gosvami ki jai.